Welcome to the Booze and Boobs podcast. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Katrina. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about some of our favorite horror movies.
We created this podcast as a way to give women more of a voice in horror. Men dominate most industries, especially film and television.
And that also goes for podcasts. We'll focus on female characters, motivations, or just expectations placed on women in horror, even if the situation is happening to a man.
We're excited you're here and we hope you love it.
Now let's get to today's movie. Welcome back to the Booze and Boobs podcast.
Yay!
Today we're going to be talking about early 2000s, low-rise jeans, caller ID, and trusting your intuition.
Yeah. All of those points are very correct.
AKA When a Stranger Calls.
We will be covering mostly the 2006 version, but we will also reference the 1979, the one that started it all. I might give a few anecdotes on the 1993 When a Stranger Calls back, because I'm the only one who's seen it. And I would argue that it is scarier than the first one. Shook me as a child. Shook.
I think that's something about like horror movies from that are older. Like if you watch them when you're younger, like they're much, much scarier than if you're an adult in 2023 watching it from, 1970 or 2006.
Yeah.
So I think it takes away some of that scary factor.
I think one of the things, though, for you, and it definitely like me in a lot of things, but there is so much in horror that I will let slide, and you watch things with such a view of cynicism.
That's just my life. I'm very critical, and if it logically in my brain says no, I'm like, don't like it.
But this is the thing that we always talk about. Where it comes from context is we have the context to watch these because we've watched everything else. So you just have to go in there and let it go.
I go in with the expectation that everybody should be as smart as me.
I didn't know one is as smart as you. You are very, very smart.
I'm glad we have that on a recording.
I had my fingers crossed. So yeah, we're going to go through it. This is my birthday episode. Hooray! Yeah. So, I got to pick, and it was kind of really hard to pick because I definitely really wanted to do When a Stranger Calls, but at the time when we were talking about it, and for like the first week of September for sure, this movie was not on anything, and it was so frustrating. And then literally out of the blue, When a Stranger Calls got on Prime. And I was like, don't mind if I Scooby-Dooby-Doo. So it was a birthday gift for me.
It truly was. They were looking out for Rachel.
Well, somebody has to.
Yeah.
So like we said, we're going to kind of stick to most of 2006. I think that we said in last month's episode, maybe I cut it out when I was editing. There is another podcast that I was listening to for a time, and they had some not great takes on some things in general, but I listened to the episode where they discussed this movie and I just stopped listening. They had no thinking caps on, no allowance for context clues, making fun of the fact that flip phones existed. And I'm 98% sure these people, they've got to be really close to our age. So just the depths of it. And then when they, revered Halloween so well, I'm like, okay, those were different times too. So right. What are we doing here? So I have I want to call this podcast When a Stranger Calls Back with a Vengeance, because this movie is phenomenal. I think it hits every beat that's necessary. It's PG-13. It's not very gory. I think there's 2 instances of blood at all. And then it's just very, very tense. And if you watch it and you just let yourself go, it's near perfect. And I won't accept criticism. Thank you.
I'm not talking because I don't want to criticize anything. No, just kidding. No, I did like this movie. I think it reflects 2006 very well. And in that sense, it is a little bit like nostalgic. Watching the 1970, is it 76?
79.
Yeah, watching the 1979 version, there's no nostalgia because we weren't born at that time. But in 2006, like we were old enough to remember those things. Like my older sister graduated in like 2003. So
Hmm.
definitely have seen those styles. I think I still was doing that in 2010, honestly. It's embarrassing.
What, the jean skirt with like the huge wide belt?
Yeah, I once wore a jean skirt with like fleece leggings
Oh,
and
yep.
my cowgirl boots, and I got roasted for that. And I was like, I thought it was really cute. I was sad, but I was like, listen, looking back now, I was on point.
You were up there. It
I
was
was.
before Gossip Girl fashion took over.
Mm, never
So
watched that.
I haven't seen the whole thing. I know what happens, and I feel I like it's just one of those shows. Like I started watching it after it had ended, so I knew who Gossip Girl was like from the very beginning. And like I'm obsessed with Blake Lively and Leighton Meester because she was in this movie. Leighton Meester was in a movie I could watch um when I was a kid, like a scary movie. So she was like my beacon of horror when I wasn't allowed to watch horror. So like there's really no excuse for me not to watch that show like constantly, but it is really really hard for like fat or me to
Mm.
really give a shit about these pretty skinny rich people for very long. So like I think the most I've ever been able to watch is like 2 or 3 episodes in a row. I'm like, okay, I'm done for a little while. I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
care. At least with Pretty
yeah,
Little Liars, there was like murder and stuff.
yeah. Something at least intriguing.
Yeah. I mean, not to say that people don't die in Gossip Girl, no spoilers, but it was just it's just not like the show for me like it
Hmm.
should be on paper. But
Yeah.
anyway. So we can start with the beginning scene of the 2006 version, which I think is super super tense. Don't you agree?
Hmm. I think the music and then it's like the darkness of the scene of like, oh, it's a fun little fair going on, but we know something like cynical is happening in the background with all of these. There's no witnesses, but they're so close to
I
what's
am going
happening.
to assume that you meant to say sinister instead of cynical.
You got it stuck in my head. You got the word cynical stuck in my head.
I mean,
Sinister.
I
Yes.
I think that that's what happened, but just for posterity, I want
Well,
the viewers who listen with their earballs. You know what? We're done. The episode's canceled. No one can talk anymore.
I think that the intro to this movie really did a good job of being like fun and playful at this fair that was happening. But in the background with the music, we see something that's actually like sinister going on. And everybody is so close to like where it's happening. Like, and nobody even knows till like the next day. And that's kind of what's scary about it is like literally your neighbors could be dead next to you and you won't even know. And you're just having the time of your life.
Yeah, so what happens over the beginning is we don't ever go inside the house. We just hear that there are phone calls being made. A girl is
Hmm.
answering, and it's kind of like a scary man's voice that's just being like really creepy. And there's multiple calls. And then at one point, the girl is like, please stop calling me. Like she's very
Yeah.
scared. And I love the scene. So there's like one of those pop-ups or like carnival things that's like right
Mhm.
next to this house lot. And everyone's having a good time. Like Katrina was saying, like right next to like this horrible thing that's happening. Cause then we pan over at one point from like the happy carnival over to the house, and then a light goes on in one of the upstairs bedrooms, and then you just see like this big shape of a man like hurling himself at something, and
Yeah.
then you just hear scream, 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 screams.
Yeah. Which nobody thinks like has a second thought about because there's a carnival ride. Kids are screaming all over the place anyway. Like
Yeah, even if
they have
anybody
no
could hear
idea.
what's going on in the house, they wouldn't think anything of
Yeah.
it. So
No.
I think that it's a really smart way to set up like the horror. aspect of it. There is like we get little tiny blips of just scenes are like around the town that are happening in the like near the carnival. And just like a callback to the first movie, we see like a an insert shot of a church and it has like Jesus Saves in a neon sign. And that is from, well, a reference to the first movie. There's a shelter that has like a Jesus Save, like it's a Christian run shelter. So that's just like an interesting little callback. I love that. Then we go to the next day where the carnival is like packed up. Like it's like there one day, then it's not.
Yeah.
And a detective is called to the house and is kind of like run through like the cops like that something awful happened here. He knows that there were deaths. A cop that was on site says that I think like they were less than a mile away like when the call came in. So like somebody called the cops. We don't ever know for sure if this babysitter did call the cops. But the detective has to go into that upstairs bedroom to kind of assess the damage because the coroner is still there, quote unquote, wading through it all, which sets the detective up. He's like, what do you mean wading through it all? Like he thinks this is like a pretty cut and dry murder, but then he opens the door. And I've seen the commentary of this movie with the director and the main actor so many times too. Like I could literally recite it. But they said that they couldn't show the gore that they were thinking about to keep the PG-13 rating, but that also plays off for like a good trick because the detective opens the door and the camera just stays on the detective and like his eyes are looking around as if he's seeing all of these horrible things, like that there's a lot to see because his eyes keep moving and then you just hear sounds of people screaming.
Yeah,
like,
and honestly, you know that this is a seasoned detective just from his facial expression alone. This is like nothing he's ever seen before.
Yeah,
the
it's
shock
awful
on his face was, and honestly, that was I was like, at that point, I guess we really don't need to see it because he's shooketh.
Yeah. And well, and that was
Like,
another thing they said in the commentary. It's like, you know, whatever the audience is imagining could be worse than what would have been shown. So it's just like the tension that leaves you there. And then we cut to the detective is out on the front porch of the house. And then the officers are bringing out several body bags. And none of them look very big. So I think we can just deduce that they're going out in pieces.
Yeah, nothing is whole that you can tell.
Yeah. So we get a little like location card because they already did the title card for When a Stranger Calls, and then we go to Fern Hill, Colorado, which is apparently 125 miles away from where they were in the first scene. And then I have some mixed feelings about this because this is definitely one of my favorite horror movies of all time. However, it stars Camilla Belle. And if you're a Swiftie like me, you know who Camilla Belle is. And she is the girl that Joe Jonas cheated on Taylor Swift with. And the movie came out way before that. So like I was already in love with this movie. I'm really, really sorry, Taylor. This is probably like the thing I'm gonna hold on to. So I don't watch her other stuff. I know that she has been in other things, but anything that she was in post the Love Bug music video, I won't watch.
I think that's fair. Yeah, and honestly, when I was rewatching this, I was like, I know I've seen this movie. And then as soon as I see her running on that circle track up above the gymnasium, I was like, oh, yeah, I've seen this. Because the first time I watched this, I was like, that is so fancy. They have a track inside their gymnasium. Because I mean, I went to like very small rural schools. So we, you know, everything is multi-purpose. I was like, oh, wow.
Camilla Belle plays Jill Johnson. Our first introduction to her is at some kind of like track practice. I assume it's track and not cross country because she's running sprints.
Yeah.
So there's a track above the basketball court. I'm like, what is that thing? And she does one lap, which if it's what like a normal track is, then it's 400 meters.
Quarter mile, yeah.
Yeah. And her coach is timing her and she keeps running it in 25 seconds and she's trying to get to 24.
But it's not a quarter mile.
Well, this is the thing. She's running in 25 seconds. But my thought, especially today when I was watching it, I was like, wait, if this is 400 meters and she's running that in 25 seconds, that is very, very fast.
Yeah, because like the fastest man alive runs like the 100-meter in like 10 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, like 400 meters should take if you're fast, you can do like the 400 meters in like a minute and 15 seconds, probably.
I'm gonna look it up.
I don't know. Is it 9 seconds
How
for
fast
100 meters?
to run? I don't know. 400 meters.
It would take me like a minute and a half to 2 minutes for sure.
This says, what is the average time for a 400-meter sprint? Like, I don't know. I'm getting a few different answers. Some of it says, like, for girls, 58 seconds. There's one thing that says, for the average Joe, probably 2.5 to 3 minutes. For an athlete, 70 to 90 seconds. How fast is
right.
Usain Bolt's 400-meter is 45.28 seconds. His
Right, but his 100.
it doesn't say the 100. The 200 is 19.
Well, I said 9 or 10 seconds for 100 meters, so
probably. Yeah. So I mean, it could be maybe a 200 that she's running, but I guess I thought that she did a whole lap.
Well, I guess if you think of it in the context of it laps around a basketball court, that's not a quarter mile. Let's just say it's a 200-meter dash.
Sure.
Let's go.
I don't know. This is what happens when I'm thinking. And while she's running, she looks down and like time kind of slows a little bit while she looks down. What we'll learn is her boyfriend is
Troy Bolton.
No, we do not insult Troy Bolton like that.
Troy Bolton.
That her boyfriend is on the basketball court and there's some trouble in paradise. We don't know what at this point, but her coach is getting on to her about, you can make 24 seconds. We both know you can. And she's like, it's like I always say, focus on something in the distance. And then Jill joins her and says, and run for it like nothing exists. That is foreshadowing.
See.
Yeah. So we need to know that she is athletic and can run. And then we go to the school hallway, which this is the discussion in that other podcast that I was like, fuck you guys. I'm never listening to you guys again. We are through. Jill says hi to somebody in the hallway and like she references the kid. Like this guy says like, hi, Jill. And she says, hi, boom, boom. And then they were making fun of like this nickname. Like, why was he called this? Why did he have to be in there? And I'm like, if you were in high school and you didn't know somebody with like a weird ass nickname, you didn't go to high school. It just is what it is. It's just setting the tone. It doesn't matter. Live with it.
Yeah, somebody wrote it in there. It's fine.
So Jill sneaks her flip phone in her locker and she's looking around, and then at one point she sees a teacher, so she like shoves it in the back of her locker. That was another point that the other podcast made, that they were like, oh, like why is she trying to hide her phone? And I'm like, this is 2006. We were technically not allowed to have our phones like on school property.
Yeah, they wanted it in your car.
I remember there was one announcement when I was in school that they wanted you to like drop it off in the office, and none of us did it, but that's what they wanted, so we did have to hide them. There was like, I remember at first, like when I had my phone in 2006, I kept it in my locker. I mean, and because this is the point, is for this movie, if you don't know, spoilers already about it, whatever. The point of this movie is that this girl has gone over her minutes on her phone bill. So that's why she has to babysit to pay everything off. All of this makes perfect sense to anyone who was like cognizant during that time period. I remember when my brother, like, he sent 7 million texts or something and he got in big trouble. And when calls had to be after 9 o'clock. So the point of making fun of a movie for that, I'm like, that is just literally what happened. So stop.
I mean, for me, my oldest sister went over on her talking minutes. So then that was restricted. And then my middle sister went over her texting limits. And so when it came time for me, I didn't get anything until I was in high school, which was like 2009, 2008. And so like 2000, I know. So in like 2006, 2007, like I had a flip phone, but I couldn't use it. Like it was like, call your parent to pick you up or your grandma to pick you up from school. And that was it. I practiced texting on the phone to nobody all through 8th grade.
Oh, can you still text in T9?
I would be at the table at dinner texting under the table, like without looking.
Right.
My
777-66-880 for the space.
Yep. And my parents were very annoyed but impressed at the same time.
So basically, like that's the whole setup of the game, is that cell phones, talking and texting was metered. So it was very important. And another thing, Jill's boyfriend like comes around the corner and is like trying to talk to her at her locker, and she's like, we've already talked 74 minutes yesterday, 126 the day before that, and 256 the day before that, or whatever her number was. And this other podcast was like, oh, like, you know how many minutes you talk? Like, that's such a dumb script. And I'm like, no, we all knew exactly how much we were talking back
Well,
then.
especially if she's in trouble and they're saying you're over X amount of minutes, you're going to analyze, like, oh shit, were we really on the phone that long?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think in a scene that's a little bit later where her dad is taking her up to the house where she's going to babysit, they're like, you went over by 800 minutes because you're allotted a certain number of minutes in your billing cycle, and then after 8 or 9 o'clock your minutes are all free, like nights and weekends or whatever. So
Yeah, because he was like, you couldn't wait till 9 o'clock. And she's like, I did. But he's like, you didn't.
well, no,
And
she's like, I always do. And then he's like, this
yeah,
time you didn't. And she's like, but you know what's going on. So
right.
we'll get to that point. But
In general, she's responsible.
exactly. Jill's boyfriend is Bobby. Then we've discovered that another girl has kissed him, and that's where the trouble is. And she's over it, like she's like done with him. And like he's trying to be like, well, she kissed me. And she's like, oh, you let her kiss you, whatever.
Mhm.
But she leaves him and then goes into this art room where we find Tessa Thompson. This was one of her like first movies. And every time I see this girl, no matter what I'm watching, I mean, I don't watch Marvel, but I know that she's been in other stuff. And it's like a joke with me and one of my friends now. It's like anytime Tessa Thompson pops up with something, I'm just like, she was in When a Stranger Calls. Because she is. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So Tessa Thompson plays Scarlett, one of Jill's friends, and Scarlett is saying to Jill, you know, don't take him back. Like that was really shitty that he kissed somebody else. And then Katie Cassidy walks in, and she's in a ton of horror movies, but this was her first movie. So I think anybody now ish watching that would be like, oh, like she's not playing the main girl. And it's like, not yet, not yet. But she comes in the scene, and then it's just really awkward. Tessa Thompson says, you guys, this is so high school, referring to like the drama. And then Jill
Hmm.
goes, Scarlett, we're in high school.
It's a little double standard of Scarlett for her to be like, don't ever take Bobby back, but you should definitely take your best friend back, who's the one that's probably even more of a backstabber at that point.
Well, she was trying to be a girl's girl because they were all three friends.
I get it. You want to keep your friend group together, but like you got to cut them both off at that point.
Well, we're in
Snip,
high
snip.
school. Shit
Yeah,
happens.
we all made dumb decisions. I get it.
That's where Jill tells Scarlett that she has to babysit that night to help pay off her cell phone bill. So she's gonna miss the school's big bonfire. They show scenes from it throughout the movie. It's got to be like football season or something. So I don't know if it's like homecoming or like just like the state champ. I don't know what it is, but the school's having a bonfire because there's got to be a way for all of Jill's friends to not be able to be with her.
Right, not have service, not all of the above.
Then we're gonna cut to that scene where Jill's dad is driving her to the house for the Mendrakises. That's the family name that was also the same name from the first movie. So everything that we've seen so far in this movie, we don't ever see in the original, but we're just getting kind of more backstory on Jill and her life and what's going on, because the Jill in the original, you know, was having like boy problems with her boyfriend Bobby
Hmm.
and wanted to talk to him. And then she talked to one of her other friends on the phone, and she's like, you know, I really like Bobby and I've liked him for a long time. So they just really expounded upon that in this remake just to like create more depth of character. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, because I think when like just jumping into like the 1979 version, it was like, okay, so this girl's just babysitting for these random people and she's just on their phone the whole time. Um
Which
and
happens.
and I guess the one of the main differences is, this movie is centered around Jill and her story of like what's happening to her in the house, whereas the 1979 version is more of, okay, this happens in the house in the first scene, but then the rest of the movie is, hunting him back down again after he escapes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the format and the layout of this movie is definitely different. So I think the backstory is more important to Jill this time in the 2006 version than it is in the 1979 version, because Jill is in the 79 version is in the beginning and in the end. Like she's like the sandwich bread on it.
Yeah. So I really like that. I think it just gives another opportunity. And when I was rewatching the old one for this podcast, I remember like, oh, the beginning's really scary. The ending's definitely really scary. And I was like, yeah, the middle's like whatever. But then when I was just watching it, I was like, okay, this guy's kind of scary.
He's so psycho. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Well,
nuts. So we can kind of talk about it a little bit.
well, I think in the middle of the 79 version, I can't remember her name, but the lady at the bar who gets targeted.
Tracy, I think
Sure. Lady
it
at the
is
bar.
now.
For me, I just loved how like cold and unbothered she was throughout like the most of it, where she was like, ugh, the whole time. Good for her. Good for her. Like she took no shit, even though he was like a psychopath.
Did we even summarize this movie? We didn't summarize either of them, did we?
No.
Oops. I'll
I
do it
mean,
real quick. I'll do it real quick so everybody knows what's going on. So the 2006 summary is Jill has to help pay off her cell phone bill. So she goes to this house to babysit these kids, and she receives menacing phone calls all night until it's revealed that the call is coming from inside the house. So it's just like a horror movie about like this one central event. The
mhm.
original, the first like 20-25 minutes is Jill goes to a house to babysit, receives some menacing phone calls, and then the killer is caught. So in the original one, Kurt Duncan is the killer, and he actually has killed the children, but Jill has escaped. In the 2006 version, the kids do not die. And in this 1979 version, the middle of the movie is where it's like 7 years later, Kurt Duncan has escaped from his prison slash asylum.
Mhm.
And the detective who caught him the first time is on the hunt for him, while Kurt Duncan is trying to assimilate back into life. Like he has no money, no shelter, no anything because he escaped. And then he starts terrorizing this other woman who wouldn't give him the time of day in a bar. But then the detective finds him. There's a chase scene. And then the last 20 minutes of the movie is Kurt Duncan has found Jill again and then starts terrorizing her family. And then the detective shows up and Kurt Duncan is dead. We kill him. Goodbye.
Bang bang.
Yeah. And then the old movie ends with like an end shot of like Jill Johnson's house, but then it's like Kurt Duncan's eyes like over the house. And let me tell you, man, that movie fucked me up as a kid. I was scared. And the new one really scared me. I mean, I was young. I was like 13. And I know that other people are like, oh, well, by the time I was 13, I was watching like blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Make your own podcast. This is about me.
It's her birthday podcast. You leave her alone.
Yeah, it's my birthday podcast, and these movies scared me. The end.
So Jill's father is driving her to the Mandrakis' house. Honestly, that's one of those say it 5 times fast. And he's talking about responsibility, and Jill mentioned she's like, well, normally she is responsible, but with this is an outlier of her character because it's not every day that your best friend kisses your boyfriend. At least I hope it's not every day.
Well, I mean, can't say it never happens because it definitely happens, but that's
It
a story for a different kind of podcast.
So they pull up on this gated driveway, which has what we see is like an older car, which we find out later is the maid's car, and then a garage. And when Jill is walking up, she basically has to like walk upstairs, around and down to like the main door entryway. And when she gets there, it's kind of in the woods, it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of like an all glass house on like a its own private lake or pond. So
Yeah, it's
it's
like
very
very
nice.
70s modern.
Yeah, and it's obviously rich people live here because this is not middle class income level of house. Like
No.
Rachel and I talked about it at one point. Like there's, Rachel said there's three main characters. It's Jill, the killer, like the phone basically, in the house. And the house is definitely a big role in this. And they do play on that very well.
Yeah, Clark Gregg plays Jill's dad, and when they're driving up and they see the house, he's like, "Man, maybe I should have been a doctor." I liked the scene where it was Jill and her dad because, I mean, that's the only time we see the dad except for the very, very end for like 1 second. But it just shows that like the family does have like a closeness to it. Jill was like, I could have driven myself, and or the dad's like, 1 month, no phone, no car. Like that's like the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, I mean, I don't know exactly how far away the Mandrakis house is from wherever Jill lives, but I'm like, my dad definitely would not have driven me. He would have been like, you have to
No.
do this.
Yeah. Get out of my face. Go away.
Yeah, for real.
But I do like, that we get to see like her little connection with her dad, but it also kind of sets up later in the movie why he's a little bit unavailable, because he mentions that he and his wife, her mother, are going to a quartet. What is it? What is it called?
Baroque
I don't know.
chamber music.
Yeah.
Because
Stuff
if it's
for
not Baroque, don't fix it.
So yeah, they're doing something that he doesn't really even seem that excited about. So,
No, but that's what you do when you love someone.
and when you're at a concert like that, you can't have your cell phone on you, even though he says, call me if you need anything. Well, she
Well,
tried.
yeah, I mean, she does try to call. Like you mentioned, they're talking about responsibility. I kept the quote, because Jill's like, Dad, I am responsible. And he knows, he understands that there's an extenuating circumstance, but it doesn't matter because she still did go over her minutes, and that is very expensive.
Yes.
So he said, like with responsibility, it's when it's not easy, when it hurts, that's when it counts.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really sets up who Jill is and how she is going to handle the situation that she's about to be dealt.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't like kids, and if that were me, bye.
Honestly, like I did babysit, but not consistently throughout like my high school years, but I never encountered this, so I was thankful for that.
I'm glad too, because then
Yeah,
you might
me
be
too.
dead, and then who would I go to Mexico with?
I think I would have lived. Well, I would have hoped that I would have lived, but who knows?
Maybe.
15-year-old Katrina versus almost 30-year-old Katrina. Who knows what would have happened?
Oh, I think
Um,
15-year-old Rachel could kick 31-year-old Rachel's ass. I can
you
make
think so?
15-year-old Rachel cry harder though. I know exactly what hurts her.
Is it the same things that hurt 31-year-old Rachel?
So in this next scene,
Going
uh,
on. So Jill arrives to the Mandrakis house, and it's gorgeous. She's greeted by Miss Dr. Mandrakis at the door, and he introduces her to the house, basically.
well, the mom does.
Oh, the mother does.
Yeah, the mom comes down the stairs after Dr. Mandrakis like invites her in. She kind of shows her around, and I made a note that like really everything that they set up in the house, they end up using it.
Mm-hmm.
So they Mrs. Mandrakis takes Jill around, shows her like the kitchen. They pass by, they have this really beautiful aviary with like a koi pond and some little birds in there. She mentions that they have a housekeeper. They walk by Chester, the little black cat, and she's like, he'll probably be there all night, like staring at the birds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She mentions that they have a guest house a little bit down the way, like from the main house, that Dr. Mandrakis's oldest child stays in every so often when he's not at school. And they mention like sometimes he just like comes home and doesn't say anything.
Right.
Because everything's foreshadowing. There's also like motion detector lights. So when you walk into a room, the light will come on, and when you leave, it'll go off.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all of the things that they're setting up, which is,
yeah,
I think, really smart because it is very inane. Mrs. Mandrakis takes Jill into the kitchen and she's like, I remember babysitting, like food's the best part. Cause so she's like, help yourself to whatever you want. And I was looking when I watched earlier and I was like, oh yeah, they've got name brand everything in there. They got it all.
Yeah. If you're splurging on your house, you're probably gonna not get the Great Value brand of everything.
Well, I
Or
don't get the
Kroger
Great
brand.
Value brand of anything because I don't shop at Walmart.
Rachel's better than us, guys.
I am.
I am an avid Walmart shopper, but that's also what is available to me.
Well, even when you lived here.
Once they're getting ready to leave and Mrs. Mandrakis is like, am I forgetting anything? And Jill goes, the children? She goes,
Yeah.
oh, silly me. Like the most important part of the job, I would hope. But she mentions, oh, I just got them to sleep. They're just coming off having the flu, so please don't wake them, which is also a little bit of a reflection to the 1979 version, because the mother had also said they're asleep, don't bother them if you don't have to. So
Yeah.
that's the key to these two movies, is the mothers are saying, don't wake my children.
It really just gives way to like the isolation that the babysitter is going to have for the time being.
Yeah. So the Mandrakises, well, she tells them where their bedroom is, basically, and then they leave. You were thinking about the next scene.
Yeah, the parents leave, and then there's like a little passage of time. Like it was like dusk-ish when Jill got dropped off, but now it's like actually nighttime.
Yeah.
So then we kind of see like Jill's just like a little bit bored. She's tired of like studying or reading whatever she was doing, and then she starts looking around the house, and then she ends up in the parents' bedroom.
Yeah, and I had so much anxiety watching her in their bathroom and everything. So she walks into the bed. I'll get there. Okay, so she walks into the bedroom, and they have, I don't know, they have this like really cool like bookshelf above, like up on the ceiling, but in the wall, and I really liked it. But she goes into the bathroom, starts like smelling the perfumes. She puts one on, she puts on a necklace, and then she goes into the closet to look at a dress and is like, does she do a British accent? And is just like, basically being like, oh my God, I'm so fancy.
Yeah,
as most
she like
kids
puts
would.
on like a little necklace and she's like playing with them. She's like, oh, thank you. I just bought them. And in the commentary, Camilla Bell said that she was making fun of the director, Simon West, because he's British. And then they had like a little conversation about that in the commentary. And then he was like, there was some word you kept making fun of me for saying. And then they figured it out. It's garage for garage.
Oh.
Yeah. And I mean, I say garage now because of that when I'm being cheeky. So it's just, I'm way too into this movie.
The only like good like British impersonation I can do is like the phrase water bottle. And
water
that's
bottle.
Water bottle. Like that's all I got. Otherwise I just sound like Dracula trying to do any other accent.
Oceans of time to find you.
And during the scene, like I know that Rosa is there. Like I know, or I'm like, she's like, okay, well, first of all, you're gonna smell like the perfume. What if you forget to put the earrings or the necklace back and you put it in the wrong spot, and somebody notices and they're gonna accuse you of stealing? And then she hears like some ruckus downstairs, like hurries up, puts everything away. Because I'm like, what if they forgot about something and they had to come back? Like, I don't know. I'm weird. But she goes downstairs to investigate. And when she gets downstairs or at the top of the stairs, I don't know which one, she sees the housekeeper, Rosa, in the aviary cleaning and feeding the birds. Like she has a little ladder of like supplies and stuff.
All of that is true, but you did miss one of my favorite parts.
Whether they don't show the closet?
Well, yeah. So, when Jill is in like the bathroom closet, she like looks around at everything. Then she hears something, so she runs back to the couch like she wasn't just like rummaging through everything. And then we cut to a little bit later. She's on the phone with Scarlett, and she's talking about how like, you should see her closet. It's bigger than my room. But they don't show us the closet because it's like one of the same things like from the first scene with like the dead bodies, where it's like, leave it to the imagination, because that closet actually like isn't super big. So they just made a mention of it. And then Jill hears something again, and it's kind of spooky. So then she starts looking around the house, like trying to find the noise. And then like there's one part where she's like standing like in the corner before the hallway, and her eye, she just like barely peeks her eye out in the hallway. So it's just like a really good shot. And then she finds Rosa. I'm being like really anal about, but I'm like, but all these scares are like so good. So then the phone rings, and this is the first time that the stranger calls. And it's just like a quick, like, as strangers do.
Creepy men, strangers do.
Yeah. And then hangs up the phone, and she's like, okay, that was weird. And then Jill's sitting on the couch studying, and then we get a light goes on down the hall, which is spooky.
Yeah, no. Well, and I at this point I would have already like forgotten about the cat. If the cat isn't like with me. So yeah, that was a ugh. The
Yeah.
only like solace in this movie is like maybe it's Rosa, maybe it's the cat. Like, and I think if Rosa or the cat weren't there, then this would have been like, okay, it's time to go a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Because I think
So,
Rosa was definitely like a comfort for her in a few scenes.
oh, I'm sure. Because for this, Jill goes to see where the light came on, but then the cat runs out. So that's just, it's a cheap scare, but it's a scare nonetheless. Then she's on the phone with Scarlett again, and Scarlett says that Bobby called her wanting Jill's number where she is at the Mandrakeses. And she's like, well, did you give it to him? And Scarlett's like, no. And then Jill's like, it's okay if you give it to him. And Scarlett's like, I'm smelling weakness.
Which
So
she says it's not, but it is. Like,
well, because that's the whole thing. Because, we've got the stuff with Bobby, we've got the stuff with Tiffany. And Scarlett is right. Like, it's so high school. I mean, it absolutely, it sucks to like be cheated on and stuff like that. But this is like very teenage, where everything's like, okay, not okay. It's okay. Okay. It's not okay again. So
it's like your brain knows, like, A, this is not okay. B, I shouldn't be with him anymore. And C, like, it's irrational to like want to be with this person still but I'm like, your emotions counteract all of those.
yeah,
and
they're just 17.
School, yeah, logic and emotions in high school is not, they're not
so we
equal.
just let it go. But then, they hang up, and Scarlett's like, we'll talk later or whatever. And we think that she's going to give Bobby the number. And then the alarm goes off. So the house has an alarm set. So the Mandrakeses left Jill the number. She punches it in, and then the alarm company calls, and they have to confirm her identity with the family. So that's all good. And then Mrs. Mandrakis calls Jill, and they just assume that Rosa might have set the alarm off. And Mrs. Mandrakis makes a joke like, I don't know how many times I've written that number down for Rosa. And they're like, ha ha ha, well, as long as everything's fine and you're good. She's just like, call me if you need me later. And, it's very professional. And then Jill goes to look for Rosa, and she goes back and looks at the aviary, and her cleaning cart and everything is still there, but there's no Rosa. And she gets her face really close to the glass, like she's like trying to look at all the corners in it. And then those goddamn misters that are in the aviary, they just go off, and picture me just like, oh, it got me.
No, that one did get me when they first went off, and I was like, okay. But yet again, it's used later on in the movie with the killer.
Yeah. I think this is super good.
Yeah. Everything that she learns about this house throughout, she ends up using as it progresses throughout the movie.
So then the phone rings again. This is the second time the stranger has called, and he just says, is everything okay? And Jill thinks like it might be Dr. Mandrakis, but then also the mom had already called, so why would he be calling? But the phone hangs up anyway, and she's like, okay then.
Can we not do this, please? Like,
right. But then we get a call a little bit later, so like another progression of time. I don't know like what spans of time the entire movie has, but it makes it feel like it's several hours.
Yeah, because the Mandrakis, like Mrs. Mandrakis does mention, oh, we're gonna go to dinner, and then if we go to a movie, we'll probably be out till like midnight or something like that.
Did they say
Which
midnight?
if they didn't, they did it in the first one, maybe.
That might be
Maybe
right.
but she does say like, oh, if dinner goes well, we may go to a movie, which I mean, dinner's 2 hours, a movie is two
Yeah, because
hours
they
plus
probably went somewhere
driving.
fancy that had like several courses and stuff. And it's not like they're living in a very popular town. So they would have had to
No.
travel.
Yeah,
So
and the
I will
people
say,
know
like,
them by name. Like when she calls the restaurant, they know them by name. So like there's reservations, there's
so a
yeah,
solid
5 hours
5 hours,
plus.
probably. So that's
I
what
mean,
we're saying.
if she got there at 6 till midnight is 6 hours plus driving. So I think it
Sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, give or take. But that and I make that point because there's like several little cut passage of time scenes because
Mm-hmm.
then we skip around and the phone rings again. And this is one of my favorite parts of the movie. So Jill's like, hello. And then this voice on the other end is like, hey. And she's like, who is this? And then the voice is like, what are you wearing? And she's over it because like she has gotten a couple like scary calls and like the alarm has already gone off and she's like had some spooks
Mm-hmm.
go on already. So she's already done with this bullshit. So his voice is like, what are you wearing? And she's like, combat boots and a parka, you jerk. Who is this? And I literally say that. Like, even if a guy, like, if a guy texts me and he's like, what are you wearing? I literally say, combat boots and a parka. Because it's like, fuck men, but don't.
But don't jinx.
I said first. Like, the voice is like laughing. She's like, this isn't funny. And it's like, yeah, it is. And then
It's just a
it
prank
hangs up.
call
Yeah,
from like
it's
her little high school friends, basically.
yeah, so dumb. But it breaks the tension for us a little bit because there have been some scares going on, but it also sets up because like there's a lot of phone conversations that happen between like the stranger and like other people. So it, sets the tone. It's like, not every time the phone rings is like a bad omen.
Right.
So Jill's over it, but then she hears something a little bit further away and she's scared. And there's this really good part where she goes up to the fireplace and at first she picks up like the little shovel
Like
thing.
dustpan.
Yeah, for the fireplace. And she has that, but then she puts it down and then she picks up the fireplace poker. And we're all just
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Thank
girl.
goodness.
So I think that Jill makes a lot of good choices considering her circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, she wouldn't have made it very far if she didn't.
AKA, she wouldn't have made it.
Lived.
So she grabs the fire poker and she's like stalking down the hallway, like looking around, seeing what she can find. And then she stops before she gets into the kitchen. And then you just hear like this rattling. And then she looks down and the fireplace poker has been like banging against the door frame a little bit, just kind of like tapping on it because her hands are shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought I thought that was really good. Like it shows like she's really scared, but she kind of can control her environment a little bit. And she just takes a minute and then she just like jumps in the kitchen. So then the light turns on and there's nothing in there. But then she hears the sound again, drops the fire poker, and it's just the ice machine.
Yep. And then she grabs herself a popsicle.
A name brand popsicle. But this is another callback to the first movie. So in the 79 version, Carol Kane plays Jill Johnson in that one. I don't think we said that before, but Carol Kane is amazing. But she hears something going on and then she goes to investigate and it's the ice machine. So sometimes in the middle of the night or even in the middle of the day, I hear my ice maker and I'm like, who's in my house? What's
Honestly,
going
if it's not the ice maker, I'm blaming it on the ice maker because
it better be the ice maker.
If it's not the ice maker, I don't want to know.
There you go. That's good.
Yeah.
So Jill takes her popsicle, walks back into the little living area. The phone rings again. And to be clear, like this is a landline that she's been answering mostly in the living room. So it doesn't have any caller ID or anything like that, which was pretty common. We only had one phone that had caller ID for a little while when I was younger.
Yeah. I'd say once we got the phone, like the wireless phones, then we got caller ID.
Yep.
And then really we only had one of those for a while and then we got two eventually, but for the most part it was one.
But she doesn't have any caller ID. So she gets a call, she answers it, and then she just hears, hello. She turns around and it's Tiffany.
The girl who kissed her boyfriend.
Yeah. Katie Cassidy is in the house.
Yeah.
So Jill, go ahead.
Oh no. I was just gonna say, I think Jill was somewhat relieved it was her, but then also was like, it's you. Because she's still mad at her.
Well, yeah, because she heard the voice behind her. So she jumped and she's scared. But yeah, I would do the same thing. Like, well, fuck, if anybody's going to be in this house, at least it's somebody I know.
Right. I'm like, even though I like don't like you right now, you're not gonna murder me. She's just trying to be a bad influence at this point. She's coming, oh, just wanted to see if you could leave the children behind and come over, you know. But before that, they were talking about the kiss. And she's like, you know what tequila does to me. And she's like, so don't drink. She's like, fine, I won't drink again. But then goes straight to the bar and it's like, now this is a good tequila.
Yeah, she's
And
talking
is
about
trying to
that.
get her to drink, trying to get her to like abandon the kids, which she knows that she's not going to do. So I think she's just like messing with her at this point.
Jill had asked her how she got in the house, and Tiffany said that the garage was open. So it's my theory that the garage door opening is what set off the alarm. So Jill goes to it and closes it, but then she makes Tiffany leave because she's not going to go to the bonfire and leave the kids and whatever. Tiffany does say this one line because she had mentioned that she had had a crush on Bobby since ninth grade, and they dated for like one whole day before Bobby and Jill got together. And then Tiffany's like, Jill, I'm a bitch. I know that. You know that. Everybody knows that. And I just took that with me in my life. And then I was thinking about it while I was thinking about that line. And I'm like, I really took a liking to all of the characters in fiction that I was not supposed to follow. And that's who I became. I was like, if you're a villain, if you're mean, I'm like, yep, I like you. That's what I want.
You seem realistic. I'm gonna go with you.
I was like, yeah. I'm gonna make that my whole
But
personality.
I will say, and like this with Tiffany leaving the house is when I truly started to feel like stress. And I think that this was like a really good, like tense scene for sure. So Tiffany gets kicked out and she's got her little purse and her low-rise jeans with the shirt that's too short.
And a blazer.
Yes. And she hears like what sounds like footsteps. It's like windy. It's getting dark outside. She hears some like rustling and maybe some footsteps and starts to like feel a little panic. So she walks a little faster, is digging for her keys the whole time. She drops them under her car, trying to hurry. And I was so stressed. Finally, she gets in. And she does check the back seat, which good for her because she does a little like 1-2 check of the back seat before she drives away. And
well, she doesn't get very far.
No. Well, and then her car doesn't start. And I'm like, oh my God, he messed with the starter. He did something. But then it starts. And then she starts reversing down the driveway and there's a branch in the way. And you can see her mind like, what do I do? Do I run over it? Do I just move it myself? Do I go back inside? Of course, we picked the wrong answer. She got out of her car to try and move the branch out of the road. And that we don't see Tiffany again for a while. She keeps hearing these footsteps though, and I'm just like, move it.
Yeah, and I think when we were watching it before, you were thinking like her car probably could have made it, but I don't know because the gate was closed. Would a car have had to have gotten to a certain point before the gate would automatically open or what? Because like maybe if she backed her car up enough, the gate would have opened and then she could have driven forward and then gotten reverse and just like zoomed out of there and would have just run over the branch.
Right.
But there were like little branches on it that were sticking up. So I don't know for sure.
Well,
but either way, Tiffany does not leave.
No, you tell yourself, oh, I'm overreacting. Just get out of the car.
Yeah.
And she was not overreacting.
That's
died.
really like the theme of this movie, especially with almost about what's going to happen next. Jill hears a bunch of pounding on the door, like fast, loud banging on the front door. She goes up there thinking it's Tiffany, like maybe she forgot something, but then she opens the door and there's nobody. There's not a particular explanation. I wonder, did Tiffany get away long enough to have been like pounding on the door and then got snatched before Jill got to the door? So then there was nothing there. But I feel like if it was Tiffany, she probably would have been screaming because I would have. So then if it's just the stranger pounding on the front door and then going away, then I feel like those are the only two options for what happened.
I feel like it was a stranger. Because A, the screaming, but also B, like it stopped like just before she opened it. So like the timing would have been like, had to have been perfect.
Yeah, and I don't know where he went because
I
She's
mean,
pounding like when she's trying to unlock the door, and there's like a little bit of space for like being around the corner of the front door. I don't know who did it.
mm-mm.
I don't know how they did
Maybe
it,
he was
but
like Spider-Man style, like knocking down, like hanging above the door.
that is very possible.
Because remember the
That's
rafters?
yeah, that's actually very possible.
Honestly, I was being sarcastic, but now I'm thinking it could be true.
Yeah, because there is a part where we see the stranger in the rafters above the children's bedroom. So like it's
Very
not
athletic.
possible. Well, yeah, that could be because I think because the way that the house is from the driveway, there's like a long like porch thing
Hmm.
that is against a wall, and then you turn right, and then you have like a few steps before you would get to the front door. But
Which,
then like on the right side of the front door, it keeps going to
yeah,
go around the corner of the house. And he could have been because that might be like where the entryway, and then there's like a little bit of space, and then the aviary's around the way, but there's like walking space
yeah.
around the whole aviary. It doesn't have any outside windows. So I don't particularly remember like the height of that part because there is like where the living room is, it's like
Yeah, tall.
lofted for these huge glass windows. And then the second floor, like there's stairs that go up, but it's not the whole area, isn't like a floor above
Right.
it. So it could be that it's, if you're in the living room and then you go down to the front door, he could have been on top of maybe that part and like banging that way.
Unless there's like, I think, I don't remember for sure, but like the front door, like the entryway doors, from the outside perspective, does it wrap around like walkway around the house? I don't remember specifically, but
It does.
yeah. So he could have
It
just
does
gone
up
like
until where
whoop.
the windows are.
Yeah. So it could have just been like a whoop. He could have been above it. We don't know.
Yeah, I feel like he wouldn't have gone from the front door straight back to go to the
Mm-mm.
path. I feel like that's too far.
Yeah.
So he would have been either above or really quick to go off to
Yeah.
the side. Because they do show when Jill opens it and there's no one there, we get another scene like from the outside looking at Jill, and there is like dead space next to the door, but there's no stranger there
Yeah.
because she looks at
So,
it. So he's above or he's off to the right.
and rightfully so, she is terrified.
Yeah. So then she
Um,
resets the alarm and then
yeah, and
locks, like there's like a top lock that like she pulls it down on the door.
which she'll realize is a mistake later.
Well,
And we have,
she did what she could.
yeah,
So Jill sets the alarm for after the pounding on the door. She double locks the door, and then the phone rings again, but it's Bobby calling Jill after a little bit of like bad service. And she says something that I think is really funny. She's like, I won't be mad. Have you been calling me? And Bobby says that Cody called and pranked her one time, which was the combat boots and a parka prank call. But Jill wants to know if there were any other calls. And he says that he'll check, but then the phone disconnects. So she tries to call back, but you get one of those like user is not in service things, which used to happen. And then the phone rings again. She thinks it might be Bobby calling her, but she goes to the kitchen to get the cordless phone. And that one has caller ID. And it says that Tiffany is calling her, which I have something to say about this is because when I make calls, people always say that it's my dad's name that comes up. So that was just like something because it said Tiffany Madison on it. And I'm like, well, mine
yeah.
says Dennis when I call people.
I
I
guess that
get it
makes
for the
sense. It
movie.
depends. Yeah, it depends on who the carrier, I guess, like the owner of the line and carrier and stuff. Like,
As we know, Tiffany can't come to the phone right now. Why? Oh, because she's dead. So that was a good one.
yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, and it also works perfect because Tiffany Haddish did that little section on the Reputation Stadium tour. So, oh, fuck Camilla Bell and what she did to Taylor Swift. But the phone rings. It says Tiffany. Jill answers it, and then there's nothing, and it just disconnects. So yucky. Then we get to a little cutscene where we're at the bonfire, which we've seen it a couple times. But then this time when I was watching it and I was, just watching, it cuts to like kids like partying and doing whatever. And then this cheerleader who's dancing up on some guy, that's Diana Agron. Most people will know her from Glee, but I know her, from Glee because I watched the first season of that show. But that's pretty deep in the Swiftverse. So all over the place stuff going on here. She's not even like really credited. Like I had to research and be like, is that Diana Agron? Like, do my eyes deceive me? So she's in that movie, but that's it. That's the only time you see her. So that must have been like her first movie or something, just being like a background actor. But Jill is calling Scarlett, who still has bad service, and Scarlett says that, everyone has bad service up there. They disconnect. Jill tries to call her dad, but there's no answer on the phone. And she's like, can you please call me? Thanks. And then she tries to call the Mandrakis'. She calls a restaurant. They say that their party had left about 40 minutes ago because she's just scared. She's getting these phone calls. It looks like her friend's calling her, but it didn't have like the staticky sound like Bobby and Scarlett had. So then she decides to call the police, and she calls it from the operator line instead of like a non-emergency line. And the operator's like, is it an emergency? And she says yes, but then she says no. And this is like where it's really heartbreaking, because it's like, we get so filled with doubt, especially as women, like, well, am I making a bigger deal out of this? And it is, but she is scared. And we know that she does have a reason to be scared because we saw the beginning of the movie where we know that he's a murderer.
Yeah.
So
he's crazy.
There's that. But Jill calls the police, and she's connected to Officer Burroughs, who I can't remember what his name is, but it's Roy from The Office.
Never trust him. I'm telling you.
He's bad. And Mooney from Logan Lucky with Adam Driver. So this is like related to Taylor Swift and Adam Driver, this movie. So like it's for me. Jill is saying that she keeps getting calls and they're starting to freak her out, and she wants help. And Roy, which was what he will be referred to, is just like, well, has he threatened you? Like, is he trying to break in? Is the alarm on? Like, okay, well, you're fine. And he's saying, like, you're right to call us, but we can't do anything unless there's like a credible threat. And I'm like, this is like a 17-year-old girl. Can y'all not do something? And then this is like when we did Creep. And Aaron's like, I'm being stalked. Like, I'm getting stuff sent to my house. And he's like, well, there's no threat, so we can't do anything. And guess what? These motherfuckers are dying because of that.
Well, and I think that's what's so frustrating is, the system is set up to protect the perpetrators, not the people. Like, and that's where like the patriarchy hurts everybody, because it's like it's protecting this man who is creeping and stalking on a 17-year-old girl. Like, and I'm sure a lot of the laws have changed. Like, I think I Googled it and it's like one call can be considered harassment now if it's unwarranted, unwanted. I guess it probably depends on the state that you live in. But I'm like, in 2006, they did not have that.
I'm sure they didn't.
Yeah. And so, like, and it's scary because the perpetrators are the ones who know the laws the best. And they know the lines that they can't cross before they get into, territory of being arrested or persecuted. And that's what's terrifying, is because it protects them, not the victims.
Yeah. And Jill's on the phone with Roy, and then she looks outside and she sees that Rosa's car is still there. And then the cop is like, oh, well, see, there's two of you. Like, you'll be fine. Like, don't you feel better now? And she's like, yeah, I guess. Which, I mean, I would, but also, they're just like, well, there's not really anything they can do. Like, I don't fault the movie for that. Like, that's what happens in real life. And that's the frustrating part about it.
The majority of the time, the police are useless. So,
and it's so frustrating. I was watching, this is a side note, but I was on Twitter and then I saw this video come up just the other day, and it was this girl saying that she went on like 2 dates with some guy, like from Tinder or like something, but they met, and she was like, you know what, like, I wish you the best. I just don't think like we're going to be a good fit. Have a nice life. And then this guy like started texting her all the time. And then it escalated to he would text her pictures of her house. He knew where she was
Mm.
coming and going, would text her pictures of her job, and then he would like be threatening her, and she tried to involve the police and she said that she had a bunch of police reports, and that the guy knew when she was going to the cops and stuff, and the guy was saying like, if you get a restraining order on me, it's just a piece of paper.
Right.
And the girl didn't, I think for a while actually didn't get a restraining order because she's like, well, I mean, he's right, like the paper's not going to do
Right.
anything. And then she had tried to call the cops and stuff like when she was getting the texts like the guy was outside, and then the cops would show up and like they couldn't find him
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So then she ended up moving, changing her number. But then she said that when she moved and she had to change her voting address, that's public
Right.
information. So he found her because of that. And then the cycle started over again. And then she had to get herself a gun. She's like, nobody's going to help me. Nothing's going to happen. And then because the guy was like threatening her, like saying he was going to rape her, he was going to kill her.
Yeah.
Like, and like all the while saying, why won't you give me a chance? Kind of stuff. And it's like, why do men?
I literally saw that TikTok today of that girl's story. So I know
Okay.
exactly who you're talking about. And what was crazy to me is the police even talked to the detectives even talked to the guy and said, he sounds like a nice guy.
Oh
What do you
yeah.
what do you mean? He's
Yeah.
literally harassing and stalking this woman, and she in the end he broke in and she had to shoot him.
And then the police got him that way because she didn't kill him,
Right,
but
he
he
ran
had like
off
injuries that like slowed him down.
and the dogs
Um,
found him.
but oh, Celine, now isn't she like isn't that guy like out of prison or something?
I didn't see any updates after that.
Like I
I'm
think
not
he got sent
sure.
to like a rehab thing, not actual prison or
Which is so
something, if I'm
infuriating
remembering
because
that
I'm
part
like,
correctly. But I was watching it and I just got sucked in
mhm.
because I think it was like a 5 minute long video.
Yeah, I watched. Yeah.
And I was like, I can't look away from this. And my
Well,
heart just broke for this
and
girl because she has to carry that with her the rest of her life.
right. She never wanted to cause harm to
No,
anybody, but like she
all
was
she did was just
forced
not want to
into a
date this one
corner.
guy.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's even scary is like so many women have similar stories to that.
Mm-hmm. It's just awful that these situations happen,
Well, and
period.
imagine the fear if they hadn't caught this guy in the end of this movie. You know,
Yeah,
like
also
for the
that.
rest of your life, like this guy knows your name, he knows everything he needs to know about you to
Well, and
stalk you
that's
and
the
follow
thing,
you.
like with the first one, is I don't think that Jill, 7 years later, knows
Right, that he
that
got
Kurt
out.
Duncan has escaped his institution. But after like we have like the little middle of the movie of him avoiding the detective, he finds Jill because she had like some newspaper clipping
Mm-hmm.
of like she like was like a gallery owner or like a real estate agent or like something where she had like
Right.
her picture and name in the paper, and he found her that way and just went to go finish what he started.
Which, as the like, why did law enforcement not notify her right away? Like, why was she not at the top of the list of like, hey, this man who called, harassed you, and said, "I want your blood all over me," um, he's loose now. Be cautious. Why
I
did they not have someone protecting her?
I can't remember. So in the old one, the detective who caught him the first time had left the force, and
Mm-hmm.
then another like beat cop at the time was now like higher up in the police force, if I remember correctly. The detective who left like had like a chip on his shoulder because this was like, a case that traumatized him. He found out that Kurt Duncan escaped, went and told like his old buddy. He was like, I'm gonna find this guy and like I'm gonna kill him.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I remember him saying that his whole goal was to just kill the guy so that he could never do it again. But
I
even in
can't
that
I can't
process, like
remember if they had said if they were gonna tell Jill or not.
I don't
I don't
remember.
remember. If they
Expl-
did, then they might have just been like, it's been so long, like we don't need to like scare her, but I don't remember that conversation.
I think if they told her, she never would have even left that house to go on
Oh
the
my gosh.
exact and done the exact thing that happened when she was babysitting. Like the parents going out to the restaurant, the kids going to sleep. Like they were recreating the very beginning of that movie, and I was like, please. don't do this to her.
Yeah, because Kurt
Ugh.
Duncan sees Jill's picture in the paper, and then her husband had gotten like some kind of promotion, so they were going out to a dinner, left the kids with a babysitter, which I think like just I mean, that girl must have had some good therapy or something, because I don't think I could ever have kids, leave them alone with a babysitter after what happened there. But
Well, and in
she
addition to
got over
that,
it.
like the phone rang and she had no reaction to it, and I was like, good for her. Good for her for not like being terrified of answering the phone or having your children answer the phone.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine like that happening to you in 1979, but then like living now, which Carol Kane is still alive, but like having that situation happen to you in 1979 when it really was just like home phones, and then living now where we all carry our phones and our phones are ringing all the time. I would be in an insane asylum. I'm like, I never want to hear another phone ring ever again. Nope, 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 nope. Very scary. Back to
She gets
2006.
yes. Just 2006, Jill gets some semblance of comfort from thinking Rosa is still in the house. Officer Burroughs, aka Roy, tells her, call back if it's still happening. Let us know if it escalates any further. And
Dumb
so,
stuff.
yeah, she hangs up, and then we get another phone call. And this phone call
Well,
is,
she first goes running. She looks around the house. She gets Rosa's number
oh,
and she's
okay.
trying to call Rosa because she thinks that she's still there. And she hears the phone ringing. And then she ends up finding Rosa's purse and keys and phone in some little closet.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes to look at it and she's like, okay, well, this is the phone I've been calling. Like, where is Rosa? But then this like door that she had opened like closes behind her. And then why the fuck? Who hung up like this hat and coat and stuff behind the door so it looks like there's a man back there?
That part got
Horrified,
me. Yeah,
terrified. I was like, so
yeah.
scary.
Well, and it's like that only happens in the movies because I was literally watching The Color Purple yesterday. I was showing Yuri the movie, and in the part where she's looking for the letter, she turns around and it's a coat with a hat on top, and she gets scared because she thought she got caught, but it was just a coat and a hat, and she just shoves it to the side. But I'm like, this nobody has things like that in their house, or shouldn't, at least.
I mean,
Stop doing
things at
that.
my house scare me for sure, but I don't have my hats are arranged differently. And then there's the part in the commentary for this movie. The director's like, and now we're in for like the legit scares. So like pretty much everything from this point on is like no more red herrings.
Right.
All
It's
scary.
real.
So the phone rings and then we get the iconic line, have you checked the children? And it's interesting. I think that this movie plays out really well to use that because in the first 20 minutes of the original, Kurt Duncan calls and says, have you checked the children a few times?
Right.
And Jill, 1979 Jill, never checked on them, which
Saved her life, essentially.
it saved her life. And those kids were dead. So,
Mhm.
uh-oh.
Oopsies.
But this movie, Jill does go check on the kids. They're sleeping. And then she goes back downstairs. The phone rings again. And then the voice says, how were the children? So Jill is terror just shoots across her and then she calls the police back right away and says that the guy can see her. He knew
Yeah.
when she went upstairs, she had shut all the curtains on the windows. And then Roy?
Or the doors locked? Oh, then you're fine. If he wanted to be in there, he'd be like, that's not comforting. Are you
It's not
kidding me?
comforting. And then Roy asks her for like the address and everything because they'll set up a trace on the phone line if she can keep him on the line for a minute or longer. And she's like, he doesn't stay on the phone for more than a few seconds. And he's like, just try. So she does try. And he's like, well, if I can send a car, it'll be at least 20 minutes. And I'm like,
Send it. Send it.
I'm like,
What do you
send a
mean?
car anyway.
Yeah.
Like, because especially like she said, like the guy is outside, like that he can see
Right.
her. He knew when she went upstairs. Send the car anyway, because maybe if nothing else, it'll just spook the guy and make him go away.
Right.
Like, if you really
His
think that there's nothing that's going to happen to this girl, why not just give her some level of comfort?
Well,
Why?
and I
Why did
think
you have to be a
like
dick?
when she gives him the address, he says, "Oh, I know where that's at." So if you know where that's at, you know she's in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors. Like
Yep.
she can't reach out to somebody, like there's no one around her. So like in a normal neighborhood, you would be able to like leave your house and be in another one in like 30 seconds and ask for help.
Well, yeah, and
Like
they already had a conversation because Roy was like, are there any friends that can come up there and stay with you? And she said that they're all at the bonfire. And he's like, oh, yeah, like we've got a couple patrol cars up there to make sure things go crazy. It's like, okay, so you do understand about preventative measures. Send the
right.
goddamn car.
Get in one yourself, Roy.
Oh,
Piece
it's
of
so
shit.
fucking annoying.
I
But
mean, if given his character, being engaged to someone for 3 to 4 years, it's gonna take him a while to get to the house.
ugh, yeah. Ugh. So Jill and Roy hang up, and then the stranger calls. He's only on the line for like 50 seconds. And she's
Yeah.
looking out the window to kind of see if she can see where he is because she said she can't see him, but she knows that he has to be outside because she wouldn't think that he's in the house.
Right, because your assumption is if somebody is harassing me and not hurting me yet, then they're not in the house yet. Like if he was in the house, he would have already like made himself known.
Yeah.
Like that would make sense to me. But good for her for knowing how like practicing her little stopwatch thing on her thing. I was like,
I
oh.
know everything because she had her stopwatch in the beginning when she was running.
Mhm.
Everything in this movie pays fucking off. This is a
Yep.
great movie. Unnamed podcast.
So she sees a light in the guest house turn on when she's checking through the curtains to see if she can see the man. And she remembers that the phone number for the guest house is on the refrigerator. So she calls the guest house to see if Todd is over there and she just gets a voicemail. She leaves a voicemail, trying to be like, hey, can you come over, please? Because I'm scared.
When she said on the voicemail that she had called the police, and then I have thoughts about this because the light goes on. She calls because she thinks somebody's there. She leaves a voicemail that says that she called the police and asks for Todd, quote unquote Todd, to come stay with her until they get there. And then she sees the shadow going over the window. It goes one way and then it comes back around. So she knows for sure that somebody is over there. But we know it's not Todd.
Right.
But just in general, I wonder the stranger could have at that point, I know that, this wasn't in the script, but he could have been like, well, I've been invited over there and she doesn't know who Todd is or what Todd looks like, so I could go over there. But that's not
Yeah,
what
but I
happened.
think no, but I think he knows he's probably too old to pass for a college student, maybe.
I mean, probably, but if she opened the
If he,
door, then
yeah, invitation accepted.
too late.
Yeah.
But that's when she decides to run to the guest house. So she grabs a candlestick and a flashlight and turns off the alarm, unlocks like the side door, back door, whatever it is, and then takes off running. She sets the alarm again when she gets outside and takes off running. So we have been set up that Jill is an athlete.
Oh. And throughout this whole movie, like I feel like the weather changes a little bit. Like it started out, it was fine, but then like when we saw the outside with Tiffany, it was very dark, it was getting windy, and then now I feel like it's even windier. So like I feel like as the story progresses, like the storm definitely progresses because it does get very, very windy outside. So
Yeah.
she's booking it through like this little dirt trail, which good for her for picking the right trail because it was longer than I thought when she was running.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the length of the lake or something.
Yeah. So she makes it to the guest house and she gets inside, but nobody is there. And then the stranger calls and stays on for longer than a minute. And she's like, gotcha. But then she looks down at the phones because she took the house phone with her just in case like somebody called. And she realizes that the phones are different and that the number is different. So it didn't get traced and broke her heart.
The way
sure.
that like my stomach fell into my butt at that point, because she's like, you called the wrong phone line. And I'm just like,
oh. Honestly, she figured it out faster than I would have because I would have been like, did you get it? Did you get it? Like,
well, I wonder.
if
I
you
mean,
knew,
I wonder like if the stranger knew.
right, that calling the wrong house phone would be fine for longer than a minute.
Well, yeah, I think that, but I don't know like specifically. Like if somebody's trying to trace the call, like the cops or the FBI or whatever, like do they know immediately or is there a processing time? Because she hangs up the phone and she's like, I gotcha. And then I think that she's kind of like waiting for like the police to call her
Mm-hmm.
to like be like, okay, like we got him, everything's fine. And that's when
Yeah.
she thinks about the phone that she had didn't ring.
Yeah.
So I wonder, is it like for the movie that it's like, oh, I would have had a call right away if they had the line right away, or if it was, just like, wait, the phone didn't ring.
Right.
But I tell you, so she has to run. Well, before she runs back to the house, she looks out the window again and she sees the light come on where it's supposed to be like Rosa's little suite
Mm-hmm.
in the main house. So she's like running back because she thinks Rosa's still in the house. And
Right.
I swear to you. So the first time I watched this movie, like I borrowed my friend's DVD for it and I had to stop the movie and like go sit out like in the living room with my parents for like a half hour. I was so fucking stressed out about this girl's journey and like everything that was happening to her because like I had like my windows closed and it was dark and my door was closed and I was like laying on like the end of my bed like right in front of the TV. I was so spooked and I like came out because my mom did not want me watching this movie anyway. She was really mad that I borrowed it, but like she let me watch it still. So then I went out there and I like sat by my mom and she's like, oh, is your movie over? And I'm like, no. I'm like, y'all got some popcorn or something? I gotta chill out. And then she was like, oh gosh. And she's like, this is why I said you shouldn't watch it. And my dad thought it was kind of funny. And I mean, and it is kind of funny. But I tell you, I don't think I really ever had like moments of that where I'm like, I cannot watch this. Like, I need to take a break. I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, girl, she's just running. But I was so scared.
Right. You didn't know what was gonna happen. It's fine.
Well, and I hadn't seen the original at that point. So like I
Yeah.
thought I mean, I just assumed everyone was gonna die.
Yeah.
It was
But
so scary to me.
fair assumption. So yeah, she's running back to the original house. She falls a little bit, drops. Does she drop the flashlight?
Yeah.
Or the and I'm like, oh God. But she just keeps booking it, and I'm like, okay, the more power to you, because ugh.
Yeah, she did not stop. You focus on something in the distance and run for it like nothing else exists. Because that's what she was
Exactly.
doing.
So she gets to the house and she goes up to Rosa's room and she's in the bedroom and the stranger calls and she's like, okay, this is my opportunity.
Well, the stranger calls like when she's starting to go up there because there's like the main stairs she has to go up and then she has to go like down around the hallway and then there's like
Yeah.
I hate to call it like a servant's quarters, but there's like a servant's quarters like off on like the back side. There's like has like one set of stairs and then another set of stairs into the bedroom. So they're talking on the phone this whole time and I am just like wheezing.
Yeah, and you can kind of tell like it's not really their section of the house because it's not decorated like the remainder of the house. And when she gets into the bedroom, you can tell it's like an individual person's place. But
And well, now that you say that, I was talking about the decorations and stuff. You are correct. But I'm like, I actually can't believe you haven't talked about how many fucking statues are in this house.
Oh, yeah. I think I just put it away from my head because I hated it. Whoever decorated the house is on my shit list because the creepy ass statues, like you really want to like get cereal at midnight and be like, ugh, every single time.
Yeah, there's like one at like the top of the stairs, like near the kid's bedroom that like it's like a man standing, but like his limbs are like dripping and they're all like in anguish. And then there's one you said like you thought it was like in the window behind her, so you thought that it was
Yes.
like him.
Oh, yeah, I don't like it. No statues in houses, please. So, as Jill is on the phone with the stranger, trying to keep him on the line as long as she possibly can. She tells him the police are gonna come, keeps asking him, like, what do you want? And then finally, we get the second coherent sentence, third, I guess, out of him, where he says, your blood all over me, which is also which is also a reference to the 1979 movie, because that's what he also says. And it is also creepy when he says it in that one.
I think that this one is also a little worse. I watched something that they said that the way that Kurt Duncan said it in the 1979 movie was like creepier because his voice is like softer and stuff. And this is like, your blood all over me. But I'm like, Okay, well, one, this is Lance Henriksen, who is like a horror king who is the voice.
Mhm.
So, shut up. But Jill's response to this was like much more visceral because in the other one, she just like hangs up the phone and she's like spooked and like grossed out. But like this one, she's
Yeah.
like, ah! Like
Yeah.
actually reacts to it. So,
And the fact that she has to think about, okay, you can't just hang up on him right away is like, because that's honestly your first instinct is you want to be like,
I know she like
no.
checks her phone and hangs up, and it's been over a minute. And then, so she's in Rosa's room now. She has heard the shower running. So maybe Rosa's in the shower. But she goes in there, opens the shower curtain. There's nothing in the shower. So she turns off the water. She gets the call and she's like, stop calling me. But then it's Roy. And what does Roy say?
The call is coming in from inside the house.
And
Get
then it's
out.
like, push pull, all the lights go off, everything's dark, the phone line gets cut, everything's done. Girl is isolated. And then from behind her,
Again,
Tiffany's cell phone rings. And she turns around and there's Tiffany's body,
with the phone lighting up
her face. Oh, it's a beautiful shot. Like Katie Cassidy, she done did. I think that Jill had a really good scream to it. And then she's trying to get out and she like slinks down the hallway and like around the corner and she's looking for everything because this is also a humongous house. So while the stranger could be anywhere, you have to assume that he's right there.
Right.
So
assume the worst at all times.
sounds like a normal day.
Yeah.
So she like sneaks around and then she's standing in front of that like fucking statue. And then she looks between the kids' room and the stairs. And you can just see her hear her father's words like running in her head. Like when it hurts, when it's not easy, that's when responsibility counts. And
Right.
like you see her like rest her head on the wall behind her. And she's like, I gotta go save these motherfucking kids.
Fucking kids. And this part, this like next part, I was like, fuck all of that. Because she goes into the kids' room and she sees like the lumps on the beds and pulls it back and it's pillows. And I was like, oh fuck, he's already got the kids. He already got them and he's tricking her. But she goes into like the kids' closet and there's like
we can't decide
box.
what it is. It's like a playroom or a bathroom or
I think it's a playroom type. I don't know, but it's got like a toy box in it with like one corner of a blanket or something sticking out. And honestly, I'm glad she saw it because I would have never noticed that. That is too small of a detail for me. And she opens it and the children are hiding inside the toy box, which good for them, but it makes me wonder like what they heard or saw. Like did they hear her scream and then went in the toy box? Did they see something? They don't really explain it. But basically, she gets the kids, they get out of the toy box, and when they try to leave this play bathroom toy box room and go into their bedroom again, we see up in like the rafters, their ceiling has like wooden rafters across it, and there's a shadow of a man crouched in the fucking ceiling.
Yeah, because when Joe was getting the kids out of the toy box, the lights all turned back on, and the kids have like this like spinny light music thing. So when she gets in there, she's like, and then she looks up and there's a fucking stranger. And what's interesting, and I didn't think about this before now, like the kids never speak. And they're like 7.
Yeah, they're old enough.
Like they're old enough to like have like some brains.
They can have conversations.
Yeah, but they never speak. They're just like crying, whimpering, screaming the whole time. Not in an annoying way, like it is very believable, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, they never say anything because Jill, when she pulls open the thing, the kids like are covering their mouths. So like they're not super loud at first. And then she introduces, she's like, I'm Jill, I'm the babysitter. And then the kids believe her.
Which is like, for the kids, there's 2 strangers in this house because they've never met Jill before.
Right.
But
so
the fact she's a woman and a child helps her case of like, I'm not gonna murder you.
Right. So Jill sees the stranger on the rafters. She goes back in that little room and shuts the door, and she takes this like lamp and winds it around. There's like coat hooks next to the door. So that's why I thought maybe it was a bathroom, because they're like towel hooks. But then there's like that big toy box in there, and we really don't see anything else in this room.
Yeah.
So
other than like the little window at the bottom.
Yeah. So we don't really know exactly. But she takes this lamp and ties it between between the little coat hook, the doorknob, that's like one of like the long handle doorknobs. It's not like the round
Mhm.
doorknob. And then the little door hinge. So she's like three-way tying it like all together and then there's like banging on it, like the stranger's trying to get in there. And there was something from the commentary, like Camilla Bell actually tied it so tight when they were filming it because there's a little window into the aviary that Jill tells the kids to go through while she's tying the thing. And then the stranger's on the other side trying to kick the door down. And then we end up seeing him like give it a good like 3 or 4 big kicks before he can get it open enough. But Camilla Bell tied it so tight, like it wasn't supposed to take 3 or 4 kicks.
She said fight or flight survival kicked in. Like,
yeah, she wasn't acting anymore. She was like, this is
yeah.
real. I know that this movie came out way before the whole Joe Jonas Taylor Swift thing, but she was pre-preparing for what Swifties were going to do to her. Although honestly, she got off way easier. We can talk about Better Than Revenge another day, but I will only sing the original version of that song. Moving on.
So the children escape into the aviary through like this little rectangle window at the bottom of the floor, and Jill follows them, and
Jill pulls the kids like over to that corner because all the lights are moving. So she thinks that the lights are turning on and off where the stranger is walking in and out of rooms. And then like the stair light comes on, but then it's just Chester on the stairs. So then Jill has like this moment where she's like backed up against the opposite wall and she's like, oh shit, if the cat's there, that means, and she turns around and then the stranger's right behind her on the other side of the glass.
Jump scare.
Yeah, jump scare. And he like puts his hands up like on the window, like framing his body, and then he just like slides them down the window, and it's scary.
And then she remembers, oh hey, the misters work. So she turns on the mister, and honestly, you can't see anything.
Yeah,
And
it goes like full power.
The children are hiding in like the corner behind some bushes, I think. And so she gets into the water to hide under this like little bridge. And as soon as she gets into the water, we find Rosa, who is weighed down with some rocks. And she does like the underwater scream thing. I'm like, yeah.
And I thought that it was really good that she got in there because like as she's like sinking down in the water, the camera like pans down with her, and then there's like a little fountain in the foreground. So it's not like she's getting in and disturbing still water. It's like the water was already moving.
Yeah.
So I thought that that was a really smart shot.
Yeah. And so she's kind of like, she has her head out of the water under the bridge because the mist is still going and she can see his feet moving. And then she sees the children and she's trying to wait until he's far enough away from the children. And then she finally tells them, okay, go. But
yeah, because he left the like aviary door open when he came in the aviary.
And the worst possible thing happened, and the sprinklers stopped, and the children ran out screaming.
Well, one of them like stepped on like the little gravel thing and it made a noise. So he saw them.
Yeah. And so they booked it out of there. And they couldn't escape because Jill put the top lock on the front door. So they're like trying to jump to like unlock the front door. And I'm like, are there no other doors that you could go out of? You can't find a stool. Do like the 2-person, like I know they're kids. So they panicked, but
yeah, it's so sad because you're like, no, like the thing that was supposed to protect you.
Yes. And so in the instance of this, the stranger finds Jill under the water and is like, it's a pretty cool like fight kind of scene because he's reaching under the bridge as she like ducks him and like he's trying to grab her from each side. When she's under the water and she notices that he's like all on one side, she kicks it and flips him into the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gets out and tries to run away. And as she's trying to get out, he grabs her hair. And then she's closing the door on her hair so that he can't get out. And the pain.
Yeah, it's a really good shot.
The roots came out and all with that chunk of hair.
She's got like the door shut behind her, like her arm behind her back, like fiddling for the lock. And she like can't move because he's got her hair. That ripping sound.
Yeah, I know that shit hurt.
I mean, honestly, her hair is thinner than ours is. but I feel like you ripped my hair. Like it was a chunk. And then there was like the director's commentary. So he's banging on the door trying
With
to
her
break through
hair.
the glass, and her chunk of hair is in his hand. I guess like it wasn't necessarily in the script that he bangs the door with her hair in his hand, but it was like just the shot that they got.
Mm-hmm.
So it adds to it a lot too.
Yeah.
So Jill's running around trying to find the kids. She did go to the front door and like undo that top lock. I wish she would have opened the door,
Right.
but she didn't.
Take a step away.
I wish she would have run out, but she didn't. She had to go find the kids, and there's like banging, and then like the music has like strings, and it's getting like dun 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 dun, and she's running around like trying to find the kids, telling them like we have to go, we have to go. And then this is one thing. So she's running all over the bottom floor of the house, and then she goes into the parents' room, past the bedroom, into the bathroom, and then she opens up like the closet doors. There's no way those closets that they show are bigger than her room. So that's just like a little thing where like in the beginning of the movie it worked because we didn't see it and it was left to our imagination. But now I'm like, okay, you showed me, and I know that that's not the part of the movie I'm supposed to like be taking away in this moment, but I know. So when she's running out of the parents' room, this was something from the commentary too. It's like the music has gotten like so intense that you don't necessarily realize that the banging has stopped. So Jill runs back through the living room, and then she's looking on the stairs, and then she sees one of the birds that was in the aviary, and she like stops and looks at it, and then she's looking around, and then she finds like a little alcove where one of like the floor window things was busted out, and then there are a bunch of birds coming out, and then Chester is eating one of the birds, and it's really sad.
Poor birdie.
I know, but
and there's also like water on the floor, so you can like see his like footsteps out of there, so you like
yeah, so he's out. It's a really good like fake out. And then Jill finds the kids in the fireplace.
Idiots. I did see.
I mean, it wasn't the first place she looked, so I mean they hid.
True. I saw one person's review of this, and I thought it was kind of funny. They were like, listen, I yelled 2 times, you don't come out, I'm gone. And I was like, honestly,
that is so funny that you say that, because I think I saw the same review, and it was after you and I did like our little watch for this, and you said, I'm calling your name 2 times, if you don't come, I'm gone. And I forgot about the review. I think I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Katrina said the same thing.
I was like, I feel that one in my soul. Like, listen, I don't know you kids from like nobody. Like, from you're nobody to me. Yeah. I have like literally I found you in a box. Okay. I did my part.
She's really working to pay off that cell phone bill for sure.
I mean, do you think that they're like she could file against the owner's like home insurance policy to get like a payout from that?
I don't think that by the end of the movie this is the least of her problems.
I'm just saying she could pay a lot of cell phone bills because I mean if you get hurt on someone's property, like you can sue them and their homeowner's insurance has to pay for that. If they got that house, they got a good home insurance policy. I guarantee that.
I bet so.
They may be nice enough to pay for some of it anyway. Who knows?
I'm like,
you saved my children. Here's some money.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have money anyway.
Yeah.
But
so
go ahead.
So she gets the kids out, but Jill is attacked and the kids run. I mean, as they should. Even though she saved them, they don't try to save her.
Well, they're like all about to get out the front door, but she has the kids go in front of her, and then the stranger like grabs her from behind.
Right. So she was on her way out. And honestly, they probably would have made more trouble being in there than not.
Yeah,
so
maybe
this
more
is
of a
really
distraction.
So this is really where we see like Jill's ability to like think and fight, because she wants to live. I tell you that.
What's that like?
I'll let you know when I find out. She tries to run up the stairs, and honestly, these stairs scare me because there's like no good handrails on either side of them,
and they're like see-through stairs, like they're just like the floating stairs.
I would feel nauseous going up them every time. She tries to run up, and he like grabs her ankle and she falls and
Oh,
yeah, knocks the
oh.
wind out of her. That right
Well,
there would have been like, I'm
and
good.
they do that like I think I counted like 3 or 4 times. Like she like
Yeah.
tries to kick and like go up, and he like grabs
Keeps
her and like
grabbing.
pulls her down, and then like they do it again, and then he like grabs her by like the belt loop and like
Hmm.
drags her down, and you can see it like through the stairway, like on the other side. Like she like hits her chest and stomach, and then like it's like her chin bouncing like boop 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 boop
Oh,
down the stairs. And then I love this part. I'm fucked up. I love this part. He grabs her and like throws her, and she hits her face on like the glass that's on like the side of it,
hmm.
which according to the commentary wasn't exactly supposed to happen, but it was a good shot. And it was not like Incident in a Ghostland where that girl hit glass and had to get like 80 stitches in her face. Camilla Bell is fine.
Yeah.
And then Jill, like the stranger's like on top of her, like from behind, and then she like can move and like kicks him, and then they both fall off the side. And Jill gets up and like runs over him, and the stranger trips her, but she like runs around the one side of the fireplace, and he runs around the closest side and knocks over all like the fireplace tool things.
Remotes and tools. And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and there was this shot. I didn't take a note of it, but then I remembered when I was watching it that she like kind of dives over the coffee table, and it's just a really good shot of her like swiping away the phone from the coffee
Yeah.
table. So it's like, the phone is like no longer, which I mean it hasn't been for a little bit, but it's like poof, gone. Like this thing that like
Yeah.
was such a big deal for most of the movie. Poof.
Yeah. So he ends up like does she break the tequila bottle on him or does it
Uh,
just break in the
he,
fall?
he's got her on her back trying to choke her, and then she grabs the tequila bottle, thanks Tiffany, and she tries to throw
Yeah.
it at him, but she like swings too like wide, and then it like crashes over the fireplace.
Which inevitably helps her. But as she's getting choked, she's like trying to inch towards the remote because earlier in the movie, she was trying to figure out how to turn the TV on, but accidentally turned on like some loud ass opera in the fireplace. So she grabs the fireplace remote and turns it on, which with the tequila causes it to make like a big whoosh and like singes him probably.
Yeah, like it's
And
like stunned him at least enough. Like I
and
don't know
he
what like the
he
word
lets
is.
go. Yeah, but he lets go basically of her, and in that she's able to get up and grab the fireplace poker and like stabs him in the hand with it, which
Don't.
I'm just gonna say double tap. That's all. But I get it.
Okay.
Not everybody's a killer.
Double tap, I can kind of get. I thought you were going to say like stab him through like the neck or head or something, but my idea of that is that fireplace poker is only a couple inches. So stabbing
I'm
through his hand, like, stakes him in at
yeah.
some point versus like
Which
stabbing him and like maybe it doesn't stop him enough.
I just had this thought of like if she had a different sport, that would determine how she ended this fight. Because
Oh,
personally, I played softball. So in my hands, that poker is a bat.
yeah.
Like I'm hitting him upside the head with it like a bat. I'm not much of a stabber person. But for her, track, it's basically I just need to run. So she's making it to where she's buying herself time to run away because that's what she knows what to do. Like she knows to run because that's track. She runs.
That's very true. Yeah. So she like stabs him down, and then there's like a thing from the commentary. It's like she like brings it down with both hands, and then she's like holding on, and then like lets go for a second and like looks at it. And I remember the director being like talking about like the mentality and about like what the actress did. And it's like it plays off really well because it's like one of those things where like she's even stunned at like her own action
Mm-hmm.
about it. But then she gets up and takes off, and then it's like, like a slow-mo ish kind of a thing. And then she runs out the door into
Roy.
Roy. Oh, about
Roy.
time you got here. Slow ass motherfucking Roy.
I'm pretty sure this took longer than 20 minutes. So we know he didn't send the car.
Especially when you consider, like, I think that, like, the times that she's recording on her watch throughout the movie, I think are pretty accurate. I would have to go back and, like, exactly time them, but it doesn't feel like it's, like, 10 seconds. Like, I feel like the minute is a minute. Anyway.
She's safe though.
Quote unquote.
Now, right. So right now, like watching this, my fear was, oh my God, they're gonna go back in there and it's just gonna be a poker, like a bloody poker, and he's gonna be gone. But they do grab him and they do catch him. The scary guy is in custody, but we all know that that don't mean nothing.
Well, so then we cut to like Jill has like a police blanket on her. She's waiting at like the back of like a an ambulance, like a paramedic truck. And then we see like the kids, like the parents have come back by now. So they're like so happy their kids are safe. And then Roy comes up and talks to Jill, and Jill's like, where is he? Roy says that he's in the back of this cop car. He has enough sedatives to kill a horse. He like nothing's gonna hurt you. And then it looks like Roy like has like a lot of compassion because like obviously this girl is like fucked up. Like she's the rest of her life done for.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, take care, Jill. And I'm like, wow. And then we go to a hospital, and then there's like a couple balloons, and when the balloons pop, and balloons are kind of like a theme throughout this because there's a ton of balloons at the beginning carnival. A balloon like covers over the title card, like walking past it, and then all of the screams from when the stranger killed like the first people, then like a red balloon is like let go and like just drifts off. So now there's balloons in Jill's hospital room. One of them pops and wakes her up. She's alone in the hospital room, then goes out, and then there's no one in the hospital, which is probably like my least favorite trope in movies because I'm like, there's always like 10 billion people in a hospital.
And the only reason she goes out there is because her call light isn't working. Like she's trying, because I'm like, otherwise I'm like, I'm not moving. There's no way. But it's got to be super unsettling to like walk out and it just be empty. And you're like, oh, okay, the apocalypse has happened, because that's how all apocalypse movies start.
But then the phone rings inside her hospital room, and she just goes back inside, and she's like by the door but looking through to where the phone is, like on the bedside table, and she just looks at it while it rings a couple times, and then it stops ringing, and then she like breathes a little sigh of relief, turns around to go shut her hospital room door, and then the stranger's in the mirror behind it and grabs her. So that wakes her up from her nightmare that she's having, where there are like nurses in the room with her trying to hold her down. Her dad is in there trying to like calm her down. She's like done for. And then we just like pan out of her room, like backwards, pan back through a hallway. There's a couple like doctors that like start to run in there. Then there's this like nurse standing at the nurse's station, just like standing there like watching the commotion happening, but he doesn't move or do anything. And I think that that's funny. Then it's over.
The end.
That girl is traumatized for life. She's done.
Yeah.
That is When a Stranger Calls, 2006, made with several references to the 1979. The 1993 When a Stranger Calls Back, like I said, is super, super scary. That one has Carol Kane and the detective Charles Durning. They reprised their roles in that. It was a TV movie, but it's really, really scary. And I think that you should watch it. I think I can't remember what it's on. I'll look at it and I'll text it to you. But you should watch it, and I won't tell you what happens, because I watched that. I watched that in the daytime when I was a kid after I had seen both of these, and I was just like, so I guess like for some people it's like home invasion movies, which I guess this kind of is. Some people it's like aliens, but like for me it's like phone calls. I'm like my phone has been on silent since 2012.
Have you seen there's a movie with like, is it called The Call, or like I know that
The Call with Halle Berry.
I know that like the front cover image or whatever it's called is like a phone, and it's got like a little scream mouth thing on it. Like
One Missed Call.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that when it came out.
That one. Mm-mm.
I think that was like an Asian horror movie that they repurposed. Like, because that was all at the same time. Like, I mean, Ringu was made into The Ring in 2002, like early, but like the aughts,
The
like
Grudge.
The Ring, The Grudge, The Uninvited, Shudder.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of them that were like One Missed Call, that were like Asian horror movies that were American made during that decade. Craziness. What thoughts do you have about this? I know we kind of talked through the whole thing. I love this movie. It's just effective.
I did like this movie. I wasn't going to tell you Yuri's reaction to it. She got bored and quit watching it halfway.
Okay, but that's what Yuri does like on literally everything.
Every single movie, which was why I was very surprised that she watched The Color Purple 2.5 hours straight with me in the first try. I'm like, wow, this never happens.
But, I just like unsettling movies. And especially go ahead.
I like movies that make me think. And I like that this really, like, it came together very nicely. The ending and the use of everything, like, tied it up in a nice little bow. Really, at the end of it, you're like, okay, everything makes sense. But I do sometimes like to have movies that you can, like, theorize with and, like, kind of, like, use your own ending to it or like use your own theories, but it's also nice to have a movie do it for you.
Yeah, this is a really good. It's PG-13. It has a beginning, middle, and end. I like that every device they introduce is ending like is used in some way. It's
And
in
I
and
think
out.
they use it well. They don't throw something in there just for argument's sake. Everything fit well.
Well, that's what I think. I've seen, and I remember when this movie came out, a ton of people were like, this movie sucks, this movie's crap. And I was reading like reviews and things like that for the podcast. And people were like, it's so many, like, just, it's just jump scares and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, but what are the jump scares? Using the fireplace poker, using the misters, Chester coming out. All of these things, like, they do play into it. And yeah, like,
it's a scary movie. It's supposed to have a jump scare. Like,
it's supposed to have jump scares. It's tense. You don't know as an audience member which of the calls that she's getting are, friend or foe.
Yeah.
She has her own story with like her friends in high school that
And I
turned
think
into this night. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, you're fine. Like in the jump scares that they use, they build up tension and then they kind of relieve it, which is really important for Jill because if it was just tension, tension, tension and scary, then she would have opted out really quick and the movie would have been over.
Exactly.
Because she had all these like jump scares, but it's just a cat. Oh, it's just the ice maker. Rosa's here. It made the movie what it was because logically she would have never stayed there.
Maybe or maybe not. I guess you could argue that like, oh, she found Rosa's keys and Rosa's car was out there. She could have taken that. But she's also the babysitter who has to take care of these kids and stay there. So
yeah. Well, and the branch is probably still there. She thinks that he's out there. She's in more danger in her mind outside than she is in the house. Like she doesn't know he's in the house at this point.
Yeah.
So for the majority of the movie.
That's just like the whole thing. It's like, I think that for everything this movie is trying to do and what it accomplishes, like it's pretty top notch. I know that like Marissa, she was like, I don't really like this movie. And she didn't want to rewatch it with me for the podcast, even though it was my birthday episode. But I was like, fine, I will watch it by myself. And then you know what I texted her? I'm very scared.
Well, and I think that's something that like I lack is like you're like, oh, watch it when it's dark, watch it when it's like really scary. Is like it really like I don't normally get scared by scary movies in that sense because I'm not thinking about it like that all the time. But I will say when I went to the movies and I watched The Nun 2, I was very scared. And I'm not normally scared by movies.
Oh my gosh.
But
I know that, I mean, I know I told you, but just like to say to the 3 people who listen to this podcast, I went to see The Nun 2 in the first showing that it was doing. So it was last Thursday and it was showing on like the grand screen. And when I got there to like buy my ticket, because like my thing was messing up on my phone, there were like 6 or 7 chairs that said that they were used. And then the guy was like, oh, I think like you're the only person that's in there. And I was like, well, there are other chairs marked off. And he was like, we just have them marked off because like the reclining feature doesn't work. So they're not in there. So I was in the biggest theater that they have all by my fucking self. And if we're going to talk about any horror character that gets me the most besides Art the Clown, it's fucking Valak. So I was in there and I was like, ooh, ah! And then I had to get on my phone a couple times and I have like the tightest theater etiquette. I don't talk. I hardly breathe. I don't touch my phone, but I was so afraid. And I kept like looking around me at some point because I've seen videos from like other people who went and saw The Nun, like previews and stuff where like there were like nun characters that like came out and like sat in the seats. And I was like, you know what? There's nobody here at 4:00 on a Thursday. And these theater people know I'm the only one in here. What if they want to come and fuck with me right now? So I was just working myself up. I was really scared. I like got on my phone when I knew like nothing was happening at the moment. I'm like, I gotta just look at Twitter for a minute. I just gotta remind myself what world I'm living in. Like I was scared. I really can't wait to watch the movie again, like either with someone or at home so I can like watch it and like know I'm completely safe because I was so afraid. It was fun, but I was
yeah, I would definitely recommend. It's very good. Now when it comes to When a Stranger Calls, would I put it in my top 10 list? For me personally, no, but I know that this is your birthday episode. So, When a Stranger Calls 2006 for your viewing and ear pleasure.
Yeah, so hopefully we made that fun. Like we said, we are going to Mexico next week on a cruise, so I'm going to have this up while we're in Mexico, so we'll be not drinking tequila because we didn't get the drink package, but we will have a bottle of water for you to listen to this. And then hopefully we will have 2 episodes out for the month of October. But do you want to say what our next episode's gonna be?
So for Friday the 13th in October, we're doing Friday the 13th. And I know I said that weird, but it's and then for Halloween, we're gonna do Halloween because we're very original.
Yeah. But it works out, and I think it'll just be fun. Thank you guys for listening. We hope that you enjoyed our episode, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Find us on Twitter or Instagram to request a movie or even just to discuss your thoughts at Booze and Boobs. Or send us an email, boozeandboobs@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we're working on turning this into a thing. So if you can please follow us on Patreon, our account there is Booze and Boobs also.
And what are some of the benefits to joining our Patreon?
Oh, Katrina, I am so glad that you asked. As a patron, you will get early release episodes, bloopers, mini episodes where we showcase scenes from the movies that we're talking about, or just conversations that we're having that we had to cut from our recording.
All that and more. And they're fun tiers. You can be an A cup, a C cup, or you can join the Triple D Plus group like us.
We truly appreciate your support, and we look forward to growing our following to create more content for listeners like you.
So we'll see you next time. Or else.
Yeah, let's end it with a threat.